is, will be, or is the subject of caregiving. In 2006, my husband Bob Woodruff was reporting in Iraq for ABC News and was gravely injured by a roadside bomb. So for the next full year, I was his caregiver at age 45, a completely unexpected role for me. My father has dementia. My daughter is hearing impaired. And I'm here today in honor of my college roommate, who is my age, 55, a wonderfully solid age for AARP, and proud to carry the card, who checked her 60-year-old husband into a full-time facility with early dementia on Friday of last week. So the face of caregiving is not a 75-year-old white-haired woman over a bed. It's time to disrupt the face of caregiving. Caregiving is me. It's many of the incredible people who have traveled here from their states to talk about what caregiving is to them. And this is an incredible issue for AARP and for all of you who've come today to listen to the stories and to what Joanne has to say and everyone else. We're so excited that you're part of this caucus. We want to welcome the members of Congress and the caregivers in attendance as well who are sharing their stories. And Joanne, who is the illustrious CEO of AARP, will be up in a second. But before she comes up, join me in watching this brief video about the caucus.
The ACT Caucus represents an economic and moral opportunity to stand with over 42 million family caregivers. It also represents our chance to support almost 4 million caregivers who care for kids who have medical or behavioral conditions or a disability. By supporting family caregivers, we can help people stay at home, which is where they want to be. We can help delay or prevent more costly institutional care and unnecessary hospitalizations, and we can save taxpayer dollars.
This is a family issue because, you know, every family could face this challenge in the future, and this is one where we, no doubt, it's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democrat issue, it's not an independent issue, it's an issue for everyone.
I am now caring for my mother. She's my financial dependent, and she's quite ill, and I'm responsible for the day-to-day quality of care and quality of life issues for my mom. So I know how important it is to provide supports to caregivers, because you really can't do it alone.
Until you're really, I think, faced with that situation, it's hard to say what you definitively will do, but I have made sure that my parents know that we're going to care for them as long as possible in their home, and then when that is no longer possible, that we will care for them in our home.
They're really unsung heroes in our society. They don't ask for much, and they spend their time giving. They drive to doctor's appointments, manage medications, cook, clean, and dress their loved ones. And we're establishing this caucus because we want to give them a voice and make sure someone in Washington is thinking about them and their families.
The Assisting Caregivers Today caucus, or the ACT caucus, this bringing together Republicans and Democrats really to focus on this issue, to bring a larger profile to this in Washington so that we can build a strong group to work on solutions together.
I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues in the ACT caucus to address these issues.
We have a significant issue, and we ought to, as a country, come together and agree that it's a clear, convincing priority that needs to be addressed.
Where we're going to go today. But it's now my pleasure to AARP in 2010 as president of the AARP Foundation, AARP's affiliated charity, and in 2013 she was named Chief Operating Officer, and September 2014 was named as the CEO. The first woman, I understand, since the founder, so breaking some glass ceilings. Since becoming CEO, Joanne has been on a mission to disrupt aging, to change the conversation in this country about what it means to get older, to help people realize the real possibilities in their lives, and to find pragmatic solutions to the challenges people face every day. And obviously today, caregiving, this is one of them. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Joanne Jenkins.
Thank you, Lee, and good afternoon, everyone. Today is an important day for America. With the launch of this caucus, we finally have a national spotlight we can shine on the value of and the need for support for family caregivers. The fact that this caucus is both bipartisan and bicameral is significant and encouraging. It sends a message that members of Congress recognize that the issues facing family caregivers and the desire to live independently and with dignity are not bound by politics or ideology. It affects nearly everyone, imposing emotional and financial burdens on families and friends, co-workers, and society. Caregiving issues affect people all across the lifespan. While anyone at any age can need the assistance of a family caregiver, and even young people can be called upon to provide care, people 50 plus represent the largest segment of these needing, and almost half of those providing care are women. That's why this is such an important issue, not only for AARP, but also for our 38 million members. As a caregiver for my brother and my father, I know firsthand the challenges that family caregivers face. I'm sure many of you have your own stories. AARP's I Heart Caregivers website is filled with the stories of ordinary people sharing their strengths, their challenges, their heartbreaks, their frustrations, and yes, even their joys in providing care for their loved ones. And we have some of our family caregivers here with us today who's going to share some of their stories. They are the reason this caucus is so important, and as I said, caregiving affects just about everyone. About 3.9 million caregivers provide care to a child under the age of 18 because of a medical or behavioral condition or disability. In 2009, nearly 42 million caregivers in this country provided care to an adult with limitations in daily activities such as bathing, dressing, meal preparation, medication management, and transportation. And almost half of those who receive these services and supports are under the age of 65. And 70% of the people 65 plus will need some kind of caregiving at some point in their lives. AARP just completed the National Caregiving Survey of registered voters aged 40 and older and found that people, regardless of their political party, are looking to Congress to help in providing more access to services and resources that people need to continue living independently and providing caregivers with respite care. Family caregivers are the backbone of services and supports in this country. They provide, enables older adults and people with disabilities to live independently in their homes and communities instead of in more costly nursing homes. And yet, family caregivers face unprecedented demands, and those demands continue to grow every day. Family caregiving dwarfs all forms of other paid assistance. In 2009, the economic value of a family support was estimated at $450 billion. That's more than the entire Medicaid program expenditures for all populations last year. $450 billion if, in fact, we were paying family caregivers for the services they're providing. More and more family caregivers are asked to provide increasingly complex and demanding care, such as managing multiple medications or caregiving for wounds that were once limited to trained nurses. And because most family caregivers are women, and women tend to live longer than men, this raises the other question of who in the end will care for those who are providing for the caregivers. These demands are leaving families and caregivers feeling emotionally stressed, struggling as they try to balance their work and family obligations, and financially strained as well. And while all of this is happening, the simple fact is that the public and the private sector policies to support family caregivers have not kept pace with the increasing demands. And that's what makes this caucus so important. It will serve as a forum to engage members of the House and the Senate, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, about family caregiving and living independently. In this caucus, this will be able to learn more about specific issues, exchange ideas, share information, and create bipartisan conversations and relationships around these issues that can lead to solutions. At AARP, we look forward to working with the caucus and with the other national organizations who are here on the caregiving issues across the lifespan and living independently to find solutions to help make life better for people in need of caregiving and for those family caregivers who provide it. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much to the members of Congress who are here, who are serving as the co-chairs of this so important caucus. Lee?
So in that spirit, Senator Kelly Ayotte from New Hampshire recognizes the importance of family caregiving, as you saw in the video. And this is her first time joining and chairing a caucus. She is a strong advocate for people with disabilities. So please welcome Senator Ayotte.
I want to thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. I want to thank Joanne for your leadership, and Nancy as well with AARP. And I'm most honored to be here with one of my constituents today, so Dr. Toby Parch Davies from Belmont, New Hampshire. And Dr. Davies is doing an amazing, just an amazing woman. Thank you for what you do as a caregiver, because obviously you're in a position where you are a caregiver for your daughter, Laura, and also your mother-in-law, but then you have a phenomenal day job at the University of New Hampshire as the project director for the Institute on Disability and the Center on Aging and Community Living at the University of New Hampshire. And you know, I thank you for your incredible work to help people of disability, and I look forward, by the way, to getting the disability treaty passed, and I know AARP has been a great advocate for that, so thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here today because you and what you're doing has really inspired this caucus. And I have to say, I'm very honored to lead this caucus with Senator Bennet from Colorado, but also my wonderful fellow House members who are here, Congresswoman Diane Black and Congresswoman Lujan Grisham, who I also play softball with. So you know, we've got a really strong bipartisan group to lead this very important caucus. And our hope is that we can really bring attention to what caregivers are going through, their struggles, the ideas. We're willing and want to hear what you think, how we can work together to address the importance of caregiving, to bring a higher level of attention to it for the American public, but also that we can work on bipartisan policy solutions to ensure that not only as we look at as Joanne said, the private sector, but the public piece, and making sure that we're keeping up with the needs of caregivers, because as we know, this is something that not only for our children, for our parents, for all of us, that we will appreciate and need at some point. And so we're all in this together, and I appreciate being part of this great caucus, and especially with our leaders who are here from the House. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for bringing us all together. And this is just the beginning. That's the excitement. We got a lot of work to do, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
We're going to just shuffle the order around a little bit, Dr. Parch Davies. We want to be able to give the caregivers enough time to talk, and our members of Congress have to go back for various votes. So we're actually going to ask you all to speak first and then talk to your caregivers, and hopefully that's all right. So in that spirit, Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham represents New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. She's an outspoken advocate for family caregivers, and as we saw in the video, you're taking care of your mother as well. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Representative Lujan Grisham. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. And I, too, am so excited about the caucus and about this launch today, because really I feel a little bit like I've been working my whole life, a bit like fate, for this very moment today. Early in my career as a lawyer, I intended to do copyright and intellectual property law, and then someone mentioned to me that I was an extrovert. I think that might have been in the video, and that being an extrovert in that job might be a little difficult to look at engineering drawings in a dark room in a big law firm. And I was really, quite literally, out of a job. And I fell into a program that most states still have that's funded through the Older Americans Act, and it's to make sure that there are legal services for senior citizens. And I ran that program, and all day, every day, I had a family member or the senior citizen or disabled adult, his or herself, calling me, who were on countless waiting lists, who didn't have the right access, who were being abused and neglected in nursing homes, who were having the kind of horrific issues from figuring out how to keep the house and get the family together and to manage schedules with very few protections. And what I really wanted as I was dealing with it from a legal perspective, whether we needed a guardianship, what I could do about advance directives, how I could make sure they had access to a doctor, how I made sure that their Medigap plans, which weren't going to cover long-term care, or Medicare, how I could make it all work. I wanted to know, where were the policymakers? And I expected my state to be doing more than just responding to the bare minimum under Medicaid. So I asked a hard question: what are you doing? And the state had very little to offer. So by golly, I wanted that job. And I wanted to be in a policy-making position. I became the director of aging, and we built it into an aging and long-term care cabinet, integrating services. We're the only state in the nation that has authority to do undercover care evaluations, looking at the care given in long-term care facilities. So I wanted to be proactive and preventative, but I also wanted to make sure that we did everything to protect folks. And it's not enough, because we have to do something federally. So I ran for Congress because I want to be in a position with my colleagues to not just raise the national awareness, and thank you, AARP, who's been marching this march for a long time, 1 billion miles, but it's time for all policymakers to recognize that we can't afford not to do it, that we must support family caregivers who, as you heard, are doing more than the entire Medicaid budget. And the majority of women are providing this care, which also means that their financial security, and I think about that for myself every day, where I dip into my savings, and my salary every single month goes to help take care of my mother, who today is a great day because I'm not as worried as I am while I'm doing my job here in Congress, because today she's in an adult day health center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There's only one in the entire state. She was on a waiting list for years. And before she got into that program, right before, she fell and broke her arm, that moment that I was dreading. She wouldn't reach out to her walker. I wouldn't be there in that moment, and she would fall, and she did. She broke her arm. Now she can't dress herself, so her independence is even minimized more. I've been doing caregiving activities since I was in grade school. First for my disabled sister, then for friends with cancer, then for my in-laws, then for my father, and now for my mother. For all of those scenarios, I was living with the person at some point in their care. And today, my mother lives with me and has the courage to let me tell her story, wherein she is also my financial dependent. I recognize how hard it is to navigate, even with the best opportunities, and I know the system. And yet I spend, on average, 20 hours a week navigating care, even today. I think that'll get better, even with this new program that she's eligible for. But while people are waiting for those gaps, significant harm and serious financial issues occur, and I'm a bit embarrassed to remind the group that now I'm sharing caregiving responsibilities with my 28-year-old daughter, who does it because she loves her grandmother, and more importantly, she loves me, or as important. But I have to figure out what I do to make sure that my daughter doesn't minimize her potential and has every opportunity for independence of her own. She should be a granddaughter, not the core caregiver for her grandmother. And so this caucus means so much to me. I want to thank all of my colleagues who are raising awareness. And I'm going to do one selfish plug, and then I'm going to sit down. I'm going to reintroduce the National Care Corps Act, which is an idea that I hope the caucus will help me refine and think about ways to make it better, which would create a national service program in this country like the Peace Corps, encouraging young people to volunteer, get a stipend and housing, get an educational credit at the end to help with the unskilled caregiving. So when I'm here, making sure that you reached out for that walker and prevented a fall, making sure that my daughter can go to a parent-teacher conference, making sure that the other caregivers show up, creating a relationship that so often is missing between caregivers and the people that they care for because we've forgot how to treat them like people. And so I'm excited to launch that again this Congress, and I appreciate the expertise of my colleagues, and I'm so honored to be before you today. And I want to thank our New Mexican who's going to share her story, Ms. Gorman. I'm very proud of the work that you do. Thank you. I'm so honored to be with you here today.
Congresswoman, I'm so glad that you did not go into the patent office. Can I just say that? We're really, really lucky that you didn't. So speaking from the heart, as everyone has, that's so important. The key, I need my glasses, which tells you that, this is the other face of AARP, right? Or I should just make the type bigger. The key to moving the important caucus work forward and supporting the over 42 million family caregivers are the caucus leaders. So Senator Ayotte, Senator Bennet, Representative Black, and Representative Lujan Grisham. I believe that Senator Bennet is on his way right now. First, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. No, did I blow it? You're ready to roll. You are ready to roll. But so I'm getting to you. There was a little bit of fluffing there, I think, to give people. So here we go, because Congressman Diane Black represents Tennessee's 6th congressional district, and she has over 40 years of experience working as a nurse. So talk about being a caregiver. You've done it from the boots on the ground, and previously championed a long-term care bill during her time in the Tennessee legislature. So please welcome Representative Black. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and it's great to be here with you today. I love kickoffs. Anybody like football? Yeah, I love kickoffs. Of course, my team back in Tennessee, the Titans, are not doing very well, so kickoffs have not been exactly good for us. But it is great to be here with you all today. It's a privilege to serve on this caucus, a bipartisan, bicameral caucus. We have some great members here with great hearts and great stories. And I know that you're going to be hearing stories. I wish that we didn't have such a busy day that I could stay here and listen to all of your stories, but you will be hearing some great stories. And this caucus is so important, and I know that firsthand from my experience back at the legislative level. I served in the Tennessee State General Assembly for 12 years, and a big part of my work while I was there was working on this issue of health care for our seniors. And we happened to be at the very bottom. I think we were like 48th in the nation with providing care for our seniors in any other space outside of a nursing home. 96% of our dollars were dedicated to going in for caring for seniors in a nursing home setting. And what I realized as I was doing my home health care nursing is that that is not the best place for people to be, at least until they really need that service. And so we went to work on that, and I'm proud to say that our state is now one of the leaders in trying to keep people in the most comfortable space for them as long as they can stay in their home. We know that's the best environment. But that's not easy, as you all know, if you have ever had a story of taking care of someone. The services that are needed while you either go to work or you have to run to the grocery store or take care of another member of the family, and especially for women. Pardon me, guys, but this role really does fall on the women much more than it does on the men. So they either have to leave the workforce, they may have to leave their school setting, they have to leave a career or a volunteer setting in order to be the primary caregiver of someone that they love. And it's not a matter that they don't want to do it. It's just that it is a very consuming job and responsibility that they have, and we need to give them relief and find ways that people can stay stay in the most comfortable setting as long as they can possibly stay there. I know my good friend Shelley Currington is here today, and Amelia. Oh my goodness, I haven't seen Amelia for a long time. They're from my district. They're from Hendersonville, Tennessee. Is Chris here with you today? Oh, Chris is right on the front row. So good looking. Glasses, yeah, glasses. Chris, thank you for being here today. I know that you all are being a caregiver to your wonderful father, Alan, who has Parkinson's, and we have over 10 million citizens out there who deal with this issue, and we just really honor you for what you're doing in caring for your dad. It is an honorable thing to do. I am so blessed at this point in my life. I have two parents who are 90 years old. They're still living in their own home. I finally insisted with my German mother, who is a hardhead, and I take after her, that we would have someone come in and clean her house. I just called her last night to tell her that the person who's going to clean her house would be coming in today, because they call once a month, let me know before they get there. And she goes, oh, I won't have time to clean up before they get there. I said, Mother, that's the reason why we have someone coming in to help you, is so you don't have to clean. But it's just a real honor for me to work across the aisle with my colleague, Representative Grisham, and then Kelly Ayotte and Senator Bennet over on the Senate side. And I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity to do great things coming together to make sure that we're taking care of those that are vulnerable and need that assistance. So thank you for allowing me to be here today for the kickoff. I wish I could stay here and listen to all your great stories, because I know that you will have many of those that are very heartwarming and touching, and some with challenges. So we'll look forward to working together to make sure we hear from you so we can address those challenges in the way that's best suited for those that we have to care for. So thank you so much for having me today. God bless your efforts.
Thank you, Representative Black. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, Senator Michael Bennet is the senior senator from Colorado. He's a leader on health issues in both the Senate Finance and Help committees, and he has worked to improve care transitions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Bennet.
Thank you very much. I also want to begin by thanking the co-chairs of this caucus, Senator Ayotte, Representative Black, who is here, Representative Lujan Grisham. This is a great bipartisan, bicameral effort, and that's largely thanks to ARP. So thank you very much for bringing us together. I also want to thank all of you who have pushed for the creation of this caucus. We look forward to working with you. This is something new, and we're trying to figure it out as we go. So we should not assume perfection at the outset, I think, and we all ought to work to continuously improve it. Don Sherling, who's here from Colorado, thank you for being here and sharing your story. It's the stories and experiences like Don's that help us appreciate the magnitude of the effort that goes on caring for our loved ones, and I can appreciate that from a family perspective. People like Don and other speakers we're going to hear from today don't ask for much in return, and they spend their time and energy doing everything they can think of to support their parents or their spouses or their children, and they're also often active members of the community as well, which is an important thing to remember. As Don will describe, in addition to caring for his wife, Elvira, he's a founding board member of a nonprofit that helps older adults with home repairs and remodeling, and he still teaches online courses at the local university. He hasn't slowed down at all, it seems. Our office has heard from countless family caregivers all across Colorado in the 6 years that I have been here who help loved ones live independently at home while trying to balance work and family. They spend their time driving to doctor's appointments, cooking, cleaning, bathing, and dressing their loved ones. Nearly half of all family caregivers perform complex medical tests like managing medications, wound care, and injections, and more often than not, they're performing those duties without any kind of repayment or reimbursement at all. These 42 million caregivers provide an estimated $450 billion worth of unpaid care annually to adults in this country. They are unsung heroes in our society, unseen in many ways, heroes in our society. We need to support them in their work. The ACT Caucus is a great step forward to calling attention to that work. It's an opportunity to raise awareness of the unique issues and challenges these caregivers face, and it's our hope everybody who's, all the chairs of this group. It's our hope to give you all a voice in Congress, a relentless voice here, and a new way to advocate in Washington. Your work will ensure someone here is thinking about you and thinking about your families. We need to find smart, common sense ways to stand with you in your efforts so that everyone can have a chance to live a safe and supported life. And I can tell you that I will do whatever I can do with my perch on the HELP Committee, the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, to make sure we're standing right there, shoulder to shoulder with you. Thank you for your efforts getting this caucus together. Thanks for having me here today, and I hope you guys have a great and productive afternoon. I guarantee you this, you will be more productive today than is the United States Senate. That's a fairly low bar.
Honesty. Wonderful remarks, Senator Bennet. I think the other thing that strikes me too is it's not so much the unreimbursed time, but there's absolutely often no training whatsoever when you become a caregiver. I was handed a bag of meds when Bob was discharged from the VA and basically had to go out and figure out how to be a nurse. So I know that's another issue that we'll be looking closely at. But now, where did he go? Don. Did he? Oh, okay. We're getting a little photo op, so I'll just vamp for a little time here. So how about those Mets? Or wait, I'm not in New York anymore, am I? Don is from Colorado, which is a state that has sent more than its fair share of sons and daughters to our wars overseas. I think one of the most striking representations of caregiving with a disrupted face, as Joanne would say, would be those members of military families, especially particularly young wives and mothers caring for those who have returned from these wars with absolutely no preparation, with no reimbursement whatsoever. So I think that's one of the ways that we can take a look at the landscape in America and see how we can help. Don, we missed you. You just sort of ran out there for your big photo op, okay? But we're glad you're back because here... Well, you're valuable because you are a family caregiver from Denver, Colorado. And as the senator said, you've devoted the last 2 years caring for your wife, Elvira. And I think there's no more illustrative and better way to drive home what we're here to do today than to hear the stories from our families. So please come on up.
Hello, my name is Don Sherling, and I'm from Denver, Colorado. I'm 80 years old. And retired, but I teach online at a local university. And besides that, I'm a caregiver. My wife, Elvira, and I have lived together for 50 years. We both had great health and lived a life where we took care of ourselves and each other. We vacationed, invited friends for evening meals, kept each other in touch with our neighborhood, school events, and church activities. We used to be quite independent, completing our specific tasks as husband and wife, and grandfather and grandmother. Mother and father, neighbors, maintaining personal and family friends. Now this has changed. My role as Elvira's caretaker began about 2 years ago. My daughters and I began to notice some change in her behavior. She got lost coming home from church. She began to forget various responsibilities. She began to forget what day of the week it was and couldn't remember family friends' names. Finally, she must have fallen about 2 years ago. My daughters and I began to notice some changes in her behavior. She got lost coming home from church. She began to forget various responsibilities. She began to forget what day of the week it was and couldn't remember again the family friends' names. Finally, she had fallen and did not remember it. My daughter and I began to notice some changes in her behavior. Where am I here now? Soon after we discovered she had a broken pelvis. In conjunction with this, she lost greater responsibility again for remembering and became dependent without believing that this was the case. We discovered she had dementia. I did not know what this was and how that would change our relationship. I discovered it was a disease. Some days she would come to me and 4 or 5 times a day and ask me what day it is. And each time I would respond by saying, it's the first time. My role as husband was to change. Elvira had to give up driving. We took the license away from her. And we can't remember the role that she has at a particular time. I do everything in the house, manage the finances, and manage the medication. We made changes in our house, in our home, to keep her safe. Like adding a gate, we have a bi-level house, and we put a gate at the top of the house, and it closes, so that she, at night, whenever she would not be tempted to walk down the stairs and fall. Besides that, 6 weeks ago, we decided to put an elevator. Listen to changes we're talking. Elevator in a bi-level house, out in the porch, so that we didn't have to walk down the stairs when it snowed. The elevator dropped so she can get right into the car. Kind of a dimension. All of that cost money. And that's an issue that we have to be at. We made changes to our home to keep her safe. It was difficult for me. I began to speak with neighbors, friends, and others who were having the same experience. What is dementia? How will this change the behavior of my wife and me? Will being Elvira's caretaker change my role as husband and father? And where do I help? As you can notice, I have been a fairly independent person. I'm 80 years old. I still was and am involved with nonprofit activities and responsibilities. I had friends who kept me professionally and socially interested and involved. I have breakfast with people at 6 o'clock in the morning, with people my age, to talk about what's happening. Now the greater responsibility focuses around the home, my wife, and my new identity as caretaker.
Thank you so much, Don. It's such a personal issue. Thank you for sharing that. It means very much to all of us. Family caregiver Dr. Toby Parch Davies from Belmont, New Hampshire, cares for her 17-year-old daughter, Laura, who has Williams syndrome, and helps her mother-in-law with dementia, all while working full-time. This is a story of far too many caregivers. We're fortunate to welcome her here today to be able to talk to us about it. Please welcome Dr. Toby Parch Davies.
I can't guarantee I won't get emotional, but I'll do my best. On behalf of my family, friends, and New Hampshire caregivers, I'd like to thank the co-chairs for creating this important ACT caucus. My name is Toby Davies, and I'm from Belmont, New Hampshire. I've been married for 23 years and have 4 children who range in age from 12 to 22 years of age. As Lee mentioned, I also work full-time conducting research on issues related to community development, poverty, workforce development, and disability. So I am a subject of my own research. Laura, my second child, was born 17 years ago. Soon after birth, she was diagnosed with Williams syndrome, a rare genetic disorder. Related to the condition, Laura was diagnosed with severe pulmonary artery stenosis, renal artery stenosis, and a blockage in her aortic valve. She also has intellectual and developmental disabilities. Laura needed frequent monitoring for cardiac pulmonary issues, speech, occupational, and physical therapy. Scheduling and attending her appointments alone was equivalent to a part-time job. One of the very hardest decisions I had to make was whether to keep working. And I'm fortunate that I have the flexibility in my work schedule, or Laura would not have been able to access the services she needed to thrive. As Laura grew, life went on, and we had 2 more children. Careers changed. I went to graduate school, and I continued to work. Work, in many respects, was my savior. Although Laura has received much support from her dad and siblings through the years, I'm her primary caregiver. The roles are many and present a sophisticated balancing act, particularly as I manage them in the context of all of my other roles, as wife, mother of 3 other children, as an employee, as a daughter, and as a friend. Laura needs assistance on a daily basis with everyday things like picking out her clothes, taking care of her belongings, emotional support for her peaks and valleys, accessing education, educational attainment, her self-advocacy, following through on her homework, household chores, and attending her everyday responsibilities. She has skills in many areas, but she needs assistance with almost everything. Being Laura's primary caregiver means that I'm riding the roller coaster with her, every high and every low. Each day I solve problems and I create solutions. It's exhausting and it's hard to sustain. I'm constantly struggling with issues of equity. Am I doing enough, attending enough, available enough for all of my kids, not just Laura? They struggle with sibling issues. They don't get as much time or attention as she does. But I do my best. I have to invest in my kids, all of my kids. But Laura's future is the most at risk. What we don't invest now will haunt us all later in life in the name of opportunity cost and increased caregiver need if we don't help her become as self-supporting as she can be. In addition to being Laura's caregiver, I've also been my mother-in-law's caregiver. In 2012, at the age of 84, Barbara came to live with me and my husband on a temporary basis because she needed to find a new place to live. To help her find her own place, I spent months collecting documents, researching her financial and insurance situation in order to qualify her for affordable housing where she could again have her own apartment. However, over time, Barbara increasingly isolated herself. She refused to do anything with neighbors, would not allow a grocery shopping service to assist her, and she refused all help unless it came immediately from her immediate family. But the support she needed grew. Our family was already very demanding, and her needs exceeded our caregiving capacity. Medications were prescribed that helped her reduce her symptoms of dementia, and she began living with my brother-in-law, also not a permanent solution. Since August, I've worked with countless social workers to locate affordable assisted living, which there doesn't appear to exist. In the meantime, she alternates living week to week with one son and then another son the alternating week. Not the best thing for her dementia. In this way, her caregivers get a break from caregiving, which is needed in order to keep this fledgling system intact. But the situation is very strained. Marriages are strained. Sibling relationships are strained. I play the social worker in the family and work with all of the assisted living locations, checking weekly on vacancies, staying up to date on benefits eligibility, forwarding medical paperwork, power of attorney documents, and working with Health and Human Services. She can't live alone. We are her support network, and we don't have backup reinforcement. Being a caregiver is a labor of love, yet this comes at a tremendous personal cost in time, money spent, loss of productivity, loss of income. As caregivers, it's hard to recognize when you're burnt out and when you're strained. We need more support, like making sure other family caregivers have the workplace flexibility I have or the respite care, so we can recharge and continue caring for our loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Many important issues. Family caregiver Mary Anita Gorman from Albuquerque, New Mexico, cared for her best friend, Robert, as he struggled with COPD until he passed away last year. Please welcome Mary Anita Gorman.
I might get emotional myself, so you just have to forgive me for that. Hello, my name is Mary Anita E. Gorman from Albuquerque, New Mexico. It has been an honor for me to be a caregiver in one capacity or another, starting at a young age caring for my great-grandmother, to today supporting my sister who cares for her son with ALS. That is why it was not difficult for me to care for Robert R. Ruttman, who would eventually become my best friend. Over the years that we knew each other, we called each other bestest friends, and every day we'd say, "You are my bestest friend," and how did that happen? Who would have thought? I met Robert about 10 years ago when we both were employed by a local pharmaceutical company where he worked in quality control and quality assurance. I noticed that during our 15-minute break, it would take Robert almost the entire 15 minutes to just walk out to the break room. He did a very good job of not letting other workers notice that he was short of breath. He would struggle for breath just walking to the break room. He would stop and lean against the wall, or stop and lean against the boxes just to prop himself up so he could catch his breath. I could not bear to watch Robert struggling, and finally approached him and convinced him that he needed to see a doctor. So this was the beginning of our friendship that would blossom into our being best friends. Initially, Robert and I would have discussions at work on what he needed to focus on when he saw his doctor. Initially, Robert was well enough to take himself to the clinic, but as time progressed, he became more short of breath, making it more difficult for him to take the long walks to the break room. The time came when we discussed his taking short-term medical leave, which he did for several months. Robert had intended to go on a long-term medical leave, but due to work demands, he was unable to do so at the time. Fortunately, we met with Social Security personnel that made it possible for Robert to retire early with a suitable income to cover his needs. I started caring for Robert without notice. I think when you start the process of caregiving for someone who is a friend or relative, it is unscheduled. You don't plan on it. It's just something that it's not something that you wake up to one day and say, oh, well, today I'm going to put it on my little calendar to be your caregiver today. No, it doesn't happen that way. It's just something that happens as a part of life. Robert did everything he could to stay healthy over the years. He soaked in all the information that the doctors provided and was diligent in following doctors' orders. Robert and I were both fortunate enough to have family members that were able to help and assist, especially as Robert's condition got progressively worse. Some of the tasks that came with caring for Robert were grocery shopping, doing the laundry, dealing with pets, getting the medication ready for the day, and just spending quality time. One of the things that Robert and I did when time allowed is watch movies. And oftentimes, I would make him rewind the movies for one reason or another, but mainly because I wasn't paying attention. And he would say, Mayor, and a movie that would take maybe an hour and a half would take us 4 hours to watch. The last visit to the hospital was very frightening, even though we knew that this process was happening as we're living daily, because the doctors explained to us that Robert's condition was getting worse and there was nothing more that they could do, and a decision had to be made. We decided at that point that the best option for Robert was to go on hospice. Robert made me the person responsible for making medical decisions, and I respected all of Robert's wishes. Robert was diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, also known as COPD, a condition that would eventually take his life. As a caregiver, I think any kind of support, whether emotional, physical, or spiritual, helps maintain some level of balance. Respite for caregivers is absolutely essential because it's difficult for family and friends to tackle being a caregiver without relief. Is very challenging. The best part of my experience as being a caregiver for Robert was he became my true best friend. And the most challenging part was losing my true best friend. I miss him terribly. Being a caregiver for a friend or family members is like taking on a second job without financial benefits. It takes time that was unplanned. It is important to have support from family members if available, and to know when to ask for help. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Family caregiver Chris Currington from Hendersonville, Tennessee, juggles a career raising 6-year-old Amelia. This is your big moment, Amelia, who's here with us today, playing with her mom's iPhone, and caring for his father, Alan. So, Chris, we'd like to welcome you to share your story.
Good afternoon. I'm something of a crier. I can cry at commercials, so I was really happy today when I was supposed to go first, because I was like, great, I can not have to endure the other stories. Not endure, that's the wrong word, but for me they're hard because they're so emotional. So anyway, so I'm originally from Alabama. I've lived in and around Nashville for the last 18 years, and I work as an auditor for a healthcare company. My wife, Shelley, works in government relations, and as you've seen, we have a sometimes adorable and sometimes insufferable 6-year-old daughter, Amelia. And my journey, and it's really truly our journey, to caregiving began unexpectedly in October 2010. Out of the blue, my mother passed away at age 70. Over the next 2 years, we observed from the distance of an 8-hour drive, my dad, Alan, struggled to keep up the same old routines at home that he and my mom had shared for almost 50 years. And in August of 2012, though, he rode up to Tennessee with Shelley's parents for Amelia's 4th birthday party. And we were just shocked at how much weight he had lost, at how disoriented he seemed. And it was very much a surprise when he asked me, I remember the moment that he asked me, to actually take him to some independent living facilities nearby. We'd been urging him to do that for a while, but he'd always been very resistant. We found one nearby that satisfied him, and 2 weeks later, we moved him up and really started our full-time caregiving to some extent. At first, things went very, very well. During that first year, we managed somehow to visit him almost every day, even if it was only for a few minutes. We made that visit, and more importantly, we made him a priority. But about a year ago, exactly a year ago, really, we started noticing changes. We noticed his gait altering, and that he was stooped over more. And he became more forgetful. And he would get confused about things that we just couldn't imagine, because he was an engineer. He liked rules, he order, he was so sharp, and so it was hard for us. And then came the first fall in May of last year. He was in the hospital for a week, and then we started what became a new normal for us, which was, let me back up and just say that until that fall, he was a 75-year-old man who still did push-ups every morning. He was still doing calisthenics. That he'd learned back in the Army, 50 years before. And so he'd never taken any prescribed medication, and he had only visited doctors, for an optometrist or for his routine annual checkup or something of that nature. And then after this fall, we had a cardiologist, we had a neurologist, we had a general practitioner that specialized in gerontology. He had some physical therapists. And this is in addition to the audiologist that we were going to for hearing aids, and the eye surgeon that we were going to for cataract surgery, and the dentist that we were going to for routine care. And he began taking all these medications for blood pressure, for the beginning stages of dementia, for this and that. And it was such a sea change for him and for us. And we found ourselves trying to cram all this into our schedule to get from one place to another. and to pick up a prescription that was being, because none of the prescriptions were synced, of course. Finally we managed to get those ordered online, so that they were just shipped to us. But it took us a while to learn that, to think about that as a possibility. And then in August of last year, the second fall came. It was back to the ER, and that whole round of doctor visitations started again. And Amelia began kindergarten in August of that year. And, it was a lot to handle for two busy professionals that have long commutes and that often have out-of-town travel commitments. But we kept going, and we seemed to get back on track. Things were going really well. And then at the beginning of November, he came down with a urinary tract infection that put him in the hospital for another week. And after discharge, he was sent to a rehabilitation clinic where he's been since. And for the first month at rehab, either Shelley or I visited him every day. Literally the first 30 days, it was every day, and that was a commitment to manage, after work, to get by there, or before work, or during the middle of the day, or something to get by there. But it was a sacrifice of time that from Amelia to some extent. But we felt he needed us to stay anchored and to stay encouraged. And one of the sacrifices that came along was Amelia's Saturday morning dance lessons. We were cramming so much into the weeks, we just needed some time on Saturday to go to the grocery store to get something done, and we just had to let that go. Those things may seem small, but you want to achieve balance and fairness in this journey that we're on together, and I'm sure we don't always get it right. As for Daddy, he has been a champion. This month he's going to transition to a new assisted living facility nearby. Back in December, we urged the neurologist to reevaluate him based on feedback we had gotten at the rehab clinic. And he was tentatively diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he began medication for that. And he has improved greatly. And we're very hopeful about his move to assisted living, that he's going to be able to maintain some independence and especially maintain his dignity. And we're fortunate in so many ways. We both have employers who have been sympathetic and flexible with us. My dad worked hard and saved even harder, so we haven't had to make any tough financial decisions. And yet, caregiving is still tough work. There's no one-stop shop for information about what resources do exist, what questions you need to ask the medical community, or even what to expect as a loved one's health declines. Better access to this type of information will help all caregivers be more present with their loved ones and not worry about all the little things so much. And so I applaud AARP and everyone else here, and especially the ACT Caucus co-chairs for coming together to help those of us who help others. So thank you.
Thanks so much. I think that the D word, dignity, is such a big piece of all of this. So thank you for that story, to all of you, for your incredibly moving stories that I think on some level probably everybody in the room can relate to. And now I'd like to introduce Nancy Lamont, who will close out today's remarks and moderate any questions for the members of Congress who may have conveniently left, okay? Well, we're just going to go straight to the caregivers, or Joanne or anyone here from AARP. Nancy is the Executive Vice President for AARP's State and National Group, and she has responsibility for driving AARP's social mission, leading government affairs, legislative and educational campaigns, volunteer operations, and the offices in 50 states, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So please welcome Nancy Lamont.
Thanks very much. I don't think we have to say very much more about why this is an important issue and why we work together to form this caucus. I'd like to thank our caregivers for coming today. You know, most of us to get here today just had to either jump in a cab or run across the Capitol grounds. But you not only had to travel, you had to find someone to take care of the person that you're caring for every single day. And we're very, very grateful to you. We appreciate so much the 4 co-chairs of the caucus, I think some of whose staff are still here. It takes a lot to agree to do one more thing, and I think you could tell that they bring a special passion to this as well. At the beginning, we mentioned that there are at least 20 other groups who have joined with AARP to work on the caucus, and I'd like to thank all of them. Some of them are represented today. You'll have an opportunity to see them as we do programs throughout the year. We know that this is an issue that cuts across all kinds of industries, interests, diseases, et cetera, and we all want to come together to work on it and to provide ways to be helpful to those of you who care every day. And I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't thank our team at AARP, many of whom are here, Joyce Rogers' Government Affairs team. I think it was about 7 or 8 months ago. I said, why don't we form a congressional caucus? And without saying really one more word, they produced the kind of magic that we have today. So Ariel Gonzalez, Rhonda Richards, who has labored mightily on this issue for many years for us, and Maggie Randolph, who's in the back of the room. Thank you all very much. It always takes more effort than we probably recognize to do something like this. And as Senator Ayotte said, this is just the beginning. Think of how much more we have to do. Like many of you, I've been a caregiver. I'm a caregiver again. How many people in this room? This is a young crowd, so it might be interesting to see how many of you are caregivers or are part of a family system with caregiving. Wow. I think this matches, I think, probably every group we've talked to along the way. We know that by virtue of the members of the caucus who are here, this is not a Republican issue, Democratic issue, as the Senator said, an independent issue. It's a family issue, and it's increasingly an important issue. We're releasing a survey today that looks at the way voters see this. And I have to be honest with you, we were very surprised when we added a question on that during the primary season to see how this really resonates as people are looking at candidates and looking for leadership, not only at the congressional level, but also at the state level, again, as one of our co-chairs talked about it. So we urge you to look at that. The members of Congress are not here. We're running late. If anybody has a question, I think it would be great to have you come forward, but we'll let everybody else run and get through security and have a wonderful opportunity for the rest of the day. So thank you all for coming, and most importantly, thank you for sticking with us as we begin this really important effort and our commitment over a long period of time. And Lee, thank you for chairing this today. Appreciate it.